And in closed session, the board took no action. Moving on to our first items on the I don't have any comment cards for like a normal meeting. We would have public comment and such, but moving on, being that this is a special board meeting, we're just going to go into the discussion items and we'll bring up those issues then. Is that okay with on the board? Yeah. So the first item on agenda is the consideration and recommendation to approve the tentative timeline for the superintendent search. And so moving here, being that I submitted the agenda item, I guess I'll read it. This is we need to develop a tentative timeline to be transparent with the public. Pamela Abel retired from her position as superintendent of Modesto City Schools on January 16th, 2018. The Board of Education voted to appoint Deputy Superintendent Craig Ridquist as the interim superintendent on December 11th, 2017. He began serving as the interim superintendent on January 13th, 2018. The board desires to retain an executive search firm for the selection of the new superintendent, and the board seeks to engage the community and stakeholders to find the best and most appropriate candidate to serve in the role of superintendent of schools from Modesto City Schools. It's important that this be done in a timely manner and the public is kept informed of the tentative timeline. So attached to the agenda is a tentative timeline. And so we are going to be discussing the timeline, and we have two meetings that the board has already set. February 5th is today, and then February 20th we had set a meeting on that. Is there any questions from the board on this, or do we want to take it to see if there's public comment on it? All right, is there anyone wanting to make public comment on this? Take a minute. It should be out in the audience. I think there should be copies out there. I'll give the public a few minutes to look that over. Anybody has any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Butler, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board and staff. My name is Dale Butler, community member.
Hang on, Dale.
And, can you hear me? Okay, very good. Dale Butler, community member, members of the board and staff. My only recommendation, and I'm sure you're going to pursue your recruitment in this manner, is to be as open as you possibly can. You have a very diverse school district, as you well know. So hopefully your research firm will be out recruiting in different segments of the community. That's certainly very important, and I encourage you to do that. And also, when it comes time to convene your appraisal panel, I assume you're going to have an appraisal panel that will include members of the community. I would certainly endorse that and recommend that you be inclusive in that regard. Have individuals from the entire community, individuals that represent the community as part of that appraisal panel. So those would be my recommendations to you. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public wanting to speak? Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right, let's go back. Yeah?
Sorry, on the timeline only or on the whole agenda?
Just the timeline.
Okay.
We're on the we separated them into two different actions. All right. So you want to, if we come, anyone else? So if we come back to the board on the timeline, we could, it would be great if we could set, for the timeline, a meeting for March 2018. Does someone want to suggest a date for that? The first meeting for March 2018?
Didn't we just sort of talk about March 5th as a potential or sort of the first week of March?
March 5th is a bond meeting. Is
Roger.
that correct, Mr. Zierli?
I got the wrong date.
Yes, that is correct. Tentatively, March 5th is set for the board workshop for facility planning and a potential bond measure.
Right, and that should take a couple hours. So
That's why I've got the 5th.
moving then maybe if
To
we
March
could,
7th,
yeah, March 7th, if we
7th.
could do that. If
maybe from 4 to 6.
the board, would people be available on that?
I'm good.
For the 6th?
The 7th.
March 7th.
That day works for me.
Is everybody, okay, so we'll add March 7th to the tentative timeline we're approving for a special board meeting, for maybe those first two items in the March on there. And then, Trustee Walker, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. And then I think that we'll wait until we get the consultant to fill in any more definite dates. This timeline is subject to change as we get the consultant on board. I just wanted to get the first few dates and get things rolling. So this will mean that we advertise, if we approve the next item, we would advertise for the proposals, send out the request for proposals for superintendent search firms. Then Mr. Walker and I would be reviewing them after they come in and arranging for interviews at the next meeting in open session. The meetings would, the interviews would take place for the consultants in open session on February 20th. All right, and I believe that, what time, we had set that before, is it 4:30? That we had set that?
Yes,
For the 20,
Yes, it's 4:30.
no, that's May.
February 20th.
Yeah, and then the March 7th, should we have that one, what time?
March 7th, 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
If that works for the board.
And then 4:30, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
February 20 was what time?
February 20th, 4:30? 4:30 to 6:30, okay. All right, so then adding to this tentative timeline, we've added the time for the meeting on February 20th from 4:30 to 6:30. And then we've added a March date, a definite date for one of the meetings on March 7th, 2018 from 4 to 6 here in the boardroom. And so I guess at this point, unless there's any other additions we want to make, is there a motion to approve the tentative timeline with those additions? Oh, yes, Mr. Yes, you have some questions.
I have a comment. March 7th from 4 to 6 would be problematic from an MTA standpoint because our rep assembly meets on that day until 5.
Oh, okay.
So we wouldn't be able to be here until at least 5:30.
We could do,
We could change it
Question.
till later?
yeah.
Will there be a closed session portion of that meeting?
There-
And let's look at what the open session time would be.
We
so that
probably
we
would be
could meet
open,
that.
yeah, we'd probably be open from 5 to 7, so maybe we would be 4 to 5 unclosed. If there's any portion of this would be closed. Again, working with our consultant, depending on that.
So could we
Would
make
5
it?
o'clock work?
Our meeting is not over until at least 5 at Downey.
Okay,
So if we could push that forward a half an hour, it sounds like we would accommodate the
right.
group.
So if we started at 4:30 and then open session at 5:30,
We would be here as promptly as we could be.
would that work? Okay, so let's do 4:30.
That for the 7th?
Yeah, for the 7th. And then, that way we could get the everything else moving that month later. So does that work? Okay.
So, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that the April and May were gonna work for us as well, or if they were too close together. I mean, to try to do all that by the end of
Well,
May.
I think at this point, then I think we maybe want to be, do we want to suggest another revision towards the end that the last two occur in June?
Yes.
The last two items on the we interview. The last two items on the agenda would be so the where it says May would be May, June.
Right, May, June. That sounds good.
Like May/June?
Yes.
And April stays.
Yes.
Or does that become April/May?
I think it probably becomes April/May.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
What we want is to make sure when we send this out for the RFP that there's the candidates for the search firm understand our time frame where we want to be on it. So they don't apply if they can't meet that time frame. All right, so are there any more revisions? Any more comments from the public? Okay. All right, is there a motion
I move approval of the timeline
with the revisions?
with revisions.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All right, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, all those opposed? None. The motion passes with trustee Grenville absent tonight. He could not make the meeting this evening. All right. This moves us on to the second item on agenda tonight, which is a consideration and recommendation to approve a request for proposals for superintendent search firms. To help with the search for the most qualified candidate, the board is seeking to retain the services of an executive search firm with experience in the recruitment of a superintendent for the district. The fiscal impact of this will be assessed after the search firm proposals are received, and we would be looking at those and addressing that on the 20th of February. So are there any questions from the board regarding the attached request for proposal? Yes, Trustee Brown.
Yes, who will we work with to identify who these potentials are that we will be reaching?
I've been given a list of some firms that are in the area, and some have already reached out to us when the superintendent's resignation was announced. So there's some names that we have. There's just some known entities. So CSBA has some names, and other sources we have provided some names. I think there's about 6 of them. So we'll be sending this out to them and see if they would want to bid. And so this will go out tomorrow in this form. So has everybody had a chance to review the draft proposal? And are there any questions of it? All right, seeing no questions from the board, are there any questions or comments from the public? Yes, Mr. Butler.
Dale Butler again. Your draft proposal, does it include inclusion of individuals from the community in the oral interview process? I know you will have board interviews, but do your board interviews include individuals from the community as part of the interview process? I know your motion didn't specifically address that, motion that you previously made. I don't think your draft proposal addresses that. I recall participating in interviews a few years back when your previous superintendent was selected. And I believe you had other community members involved in the interview process as well. So are you changing, from that format to what you plan to do this time around?
Right now, what we're considering is hiring the search firm to help us collect the resumes for potential candidates, and then as we move forward, deciding on what the process would be. We would determine what the engagement of the public would be on that.
Okay, so there is that possibility down the road for inclusion of individuals from the community in the oral interview process, then, or has that been closed already?
That the board would need to discuss that, and so that isn't part of what the proposal for. Right now, all we're talking about is a request for proposals for the search firm.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Yeah, and so the board would need to address that later, and the process. Once we hire the firm, we can address some of the process issues. But we do want them to be, the outreach to the public is part of what they're going to help with. And so part of this proposal, if I could refer you to
I know you'll have a couple of community forums, and I think that's great.
Right,
And you'll
we're
have
gonna
some surveys, and I think that's wonderful too.
We're going to have online surveys. We were looking for an executive search firm that can aid us in the online surveys, the community forums, and reaching out to the public, and also meeting with stakeholders and working with them. That's on the timeline as well.
Yeah, which I think is wonderful. I think the process is spelled out, very, very nicely, and it is inclusive from a standpoint of including members of the community. But it's that final, stage of the process that I was speaking to tonight, and that has to do with the actual interviews, which I believe in the past, as I mentioned, I was a part of the interview process the last time. And I thought that was great. And I'm not asking to be included, but I would hope that someone from various sections of the community, so you have diversity, and so it flows that way, happens. So that's why I'm making my comments tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the public regarding the request for proposal? What services we are seeking from them? All right, seeing comments or questions from the public?
I apologize, first of all, for not ever knowing when it's my turn to come up here and speak to address
Oh
you.
yeah, that's
so
okay.
Horrible at that. So I'm Angela Yoli. I think you all know me by now. MCS managers. I'm board president, but I'm actually up here just as an employee. I'll say as a taxpayer, community member, because this is my personal thoughts and opinions. I'm not speaking on behalf of all of the managers. Okay. I think you all remember too that when you had a board meeting to appoint Mr. Redquist as our interim superintendent, that I got up and spoke. And I'm just going to reiterate some of those same thoughts. I'm not really sure that I understood that you weren't going to continue his interimship, is that the right word, through the end of Ms. Abel's contract, and that he would just automatically be appointed. Never in a million years did I think we'd go down this road that we went down once before and were not successful. Because I was here when we did the outside search and we hired from someone not from our community. I just feel that you have the right person sitting here in front of you right now, and I don't know that this is going to change that. And I feel as a taxpayer, we could be using the money in other ways. I don't think this is going to be well spent. I realize this is your job. This is what you do. This is the most important thing, and you are the people to hire our superintendent. I just hope at the end of all of it, I hope it's still this person sitting in front of us, and that we didn't, I understand we need to go through processes, and I understand the community involvement, and I remember being a part of that before, and we did we were asked for our input, even from certain board members that came and met with certain representatives from the managers group. So I just wanted to say that, you know, he has been, I mean, he's probably the most well-rounded administrator. The fact that he's been in so many of our departments and divisions. We have a unique culture in this school district, as some of the long-term board members know very well, and he knows our culture, and you cannot get that when you're hiring from outside of this community, for one thing. And you can't get that when you're not hiring from a Modesto City Schools employee, because they don't know the culture until they've been here, and they've been here for a while. So these are the reasons. I truly believe he's the best person for the job, and I'll say it over and over again, but I understand you have to do what you have to do. I just think, you know, if it's 50 grand or whatever you end up spending on it, it's going to be a waste of money. But that's just my personal opinion. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else? The public want to speak? Now would be the time to comment on a search. So if you have any opinions, share with us. All right, back to the board for discussion and a motion of approval or any revisions to the draft proposal. Trustee Walker.
I'll say thank you to President Newman, because she's done a lot of work. It's been shuffled towards me, but you've done a lot of work as far as putting this together, and I think that needs to be noted and appreciated. I think as a board, I think we've talked in the closed session part of this about the process, and I think that's important as part of what we do. As you mentioned, I think it's one of the biggest decisions we can make. It's the only individual we can hire, and I think as we move forward, the concept is we come out of this as a governance team, in the sense that there are, if I count our student rep, 8, 9 of us all moving in one direction together. And my honest hope is that at the end of this, there are 8, 9 people, counting our student, moving in one direction. And I think if that's the outcome, it's still a win-win. And going through the process, I think, has value in it, because it empowers, because if that's the choice, it empowers us to speak the voice of those who have elected us. And I think that all those things are important moving forward as we make one of the biggest decisions we can make. And if nobody else has got anything, I'll motion to approve.
Does anyone else want to talk, or anyone else? All right. Go ahead.
I also appreciate what President Newman has done, and in taking some ideas and thoughts and putting them together as a draft proposal, just to be able to give some ideas for discussion, and some ideas as someone who's gone through this twice now, this is my third go around with this, and I think it's really helpful to see the ideas and thoughts that are put together on this sheet that you took and put them in here for the firm to know, because I don't know if a firm really knows that until we actually meet with them. So that helps. I think it helps the dialogue to move along a little faster, and especially since we don't have a really long timeline for this. So thank you.
And I just want to say, I worked with Trustee Walker on, and doing this, and just trying to listen to what we want to do as a board, and just the importance of the process, and going through this process. We do have a short timeline, and trying to get this done by June is the goal. Obviously, we've just approved the timeline, and including the reaching out to the public, trying to find out where people are at, and including them in what they want to see in a new superintendent as we move forward, engaging the public. So I'm looking for a motion for approval of the request for proposals.
So moved.
All right, and is there a second? The seconded by Trustee Lopez. All right, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None, with Trustee Grenbow absent tonight. All right, so the motion passes. And seeing no other items on the agenda for business tonight, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. All right, it's been moved by Trustee Brown and seconded by Trustee West. All right, all those in favor state aye. Aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.